All right, DJ Nubis here, along with Kevin Lambert from KLE headquarters, and we are the Cinematic Synergy, bringing you another review. This time from Mr. Lambert's pick, From Black, a Shudder original. And sir, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. It's been a pretty busy day through family commitments. The British heat, because if for those that might not know, I'm from Newcastle in England. It's pretty out there. Like I'm basically fucking cooking. That's the only way I can describe it. I'm not used to this heat, but I'm surviving. I'm alive.
That's the
We have
important
to do
part.
this fucking review.
And that review is From Black 2023, directed by Thomas Marchese. Cast is Anna Camp, John Aless, and Jennifer LaFleur. Plot is a recovering drug addict, desperate for closure and saddled by crushing guilt after the disappearance of her young son, is presented with a bizarre offer to learn the truth about what happened to set things right. If she is willing to pay a terrifying price, how dark is she willing to go for a chance at redemption? So first things first, I knew I kind of recognized the lead actress, Anna Camp. She has apparently appeared in the Pitch Perfect trilogy, The Help, TV shows like True Blood, The Office, and Mad Men. So I've seen her around. Usually she's a blonde, so it's kind of hard to get used to the brunette look. But yeah, she's a pretty good actress. She was about the only one I recognize. The other two main characters I don't really know. But yeah, so basically she's this chick who is has a guy friend who is like a loser who provides drugs, and they were drugged out one day and her son disappears. Her sister Bray is the sheriff of the town that she's in, and they notify her that her kid's missing. And then of course it fast forwards about I think a year later, and she's in a therapy group and just trying to recover from the guilt and the drug addiction and everything else regarding the son's disappearance. And this, of course, there's another guy there named Abel who lost his child, who soon approaches her to tell her that, hey, there is a way we can reverse this tragedy. I've done it. I've brought my girl back. It pertains to doing a ritual. She thought it was a seance at first, but he's like, no, it's a ritual. And so this is where they start getting into some weird things. Now, of course, this is sort of the story part of it, but the movie starts with her being discovered by police, and of course, her sister's questioning
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, so like you say, the film starts off basically where she gets picked up by the police. You see this shot in the beginning where there's a door, and as the door opens, you just see it looks like just an empty house. But then as the door widens, you see the splash of blood on the floor, and you know something bad's happened. Then,
Yeah,
like you said,
a
the
lot of blood.
next, yeah, not just like a sprinkle, a lot of blood. And then the next shot is here in the police station. The one thing I will say about this movie as we progress is right from the beginning was the tone, the music, the atmosphere. Right from the beginning was set, and then I was kind of lost with that as the movie progressed, because I think it's an hour and 40 minutes, or a
Something
bit
like that.
longer. So I thought, it started off really atmospheric, and then I kind of lost it a bit. But then that's because that part is developing the characters.
Yeah.
But then you get to a certain point in the movie where everything starts to go in a certain way, and then it picks right back up. And once it picks up, it gets there right till the end.
Yeah, agreed. Her sister's trying to question, like, there's blood on her while she's at the office there and the station, and then they're trying to figure out whose blood it is that's on her, and then of course, Cora's going through the story of how everything came to be.
Yeah.
Uh,
Laura, and
yeah.
yeah, this is for like anybody that's going to watch this film after this review. It can become a bit complicated because you don't know if you're watching what's happening now or if it's a flashback or if because there's kind of more than one flashback. There's like a flashback of kind of the ritual,
Mhm.
then there's the flashback before the ritual, and then there's like bits and pieces that play about. So you have to kind of play detail to all of what's going on for it all to come together at the end. So for anybody that does watch this film after this review, it can be complicated, but if you stick with it, it does end up being quite an interesting,
Mhm.
interesting movie.
Yeah, I like the attention to detail because there's a point where Cora explains to the officers that, Abel, who's the guy that kind of got her into all this,
Mm,
brought his daughter back and said that she's living in Boston. And so, like, you would normally think, oh, okay, well, they're just going to kind of overlook that. But the characters of law enforcement actually follow up on. They actually discover that
yeah,
indeed this girl does exist, even though they saw her body like months before, a year before. And so I like that little bit of attention to detail because that now puts a sense of questions that the cops have to now answer
yeah.
because they have to now challenge themselves. Do we believe her?
Mm,
Or we still think she's just drugged out of her mind?
yeah.
That's the thing.
Because that kind of happens after, like, obviously, like you said, she's a recovering alcoholic and she's going to like these classes, these rehab classes. And like you said, she's introduced to this evil character who he must in himself be like some sort of recovering alcoholic or drug user. And like you mentioned before, he had a daughter that tragically was lost. We don't find out how she was lost, but and then it pans back to like her with this loser of a character, this loser bloke, loser boyfriend,
Yeah.
and then he offers her a solution to find a son who you don't in the beginning find out how she lost him. And it's quite sad as the story progresses because you see really basically how she lost her son, which
Yeah,
was
she was
quite,
drugged out of her mind and not paying attention, and he goes
yep.
out there, but they never found a body. They just found one shoe, which plays a factor later in the film.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see why she would have spiraled out. Like it's surprising she didn't even stay on drugs. Like she was so full of guilt about what happened that you would think she'd kind of just lose it and just trash herself. But she managed to like sober up and do a day job and all that stuff. But the boyfriend used to keep trying to come around. They actually had to serve him papers to stay away from her and the house because he's a bad influence, obviously, and she didn't. Cora didn't want him there, so he's a real piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. So the interesting thing is when Abel finally comes in, he's convincing her about how to go about bringing him the son back. Is that he has to go through these series of rituals that kind of progress. So the first one, of course, was an interesting one where they got the circle of salt. She's in there. He's got the chain. He's got this uh, like bracelet he puts on her ankle so that he already knows kind of like what's going to happen, just not when. So he stays outside the circle and he's doing all these readings and his chants and stuff. And it's a long process. So she's kind of standing there in the circle for quite a while. She's getting kind of annoyed and hungry and tired. So she thinks at this point it's all bullshit until eventually, as he's chanting away, he has to stop because he hears the chains rattle. And then that's when she's kind of uplifted in the air,
She's now
suspended.
hovering in the air and
Yeah.
in suspense animation, and she's just arms loose. If anyone that's seen The Exorcist and you see that scene where Reagan floats out of the bed,
Yeah.
that basically gives you the idea of this particular scene. She's got the chain attached to her foot and she's now floating within the air.
Yep.
And I think that's when, or that is when she starts realizing that basically Abel is not talking shit.
Yeah,
She's
because
now
once he
starting to
falls
believe
back
that.
down, she's kind of like, oh my God, it's real. Like she felt energy, she felt all this stuff going on, but she doesn't really have an idea or a semblance of where this is all going because obviously the more they do, the more it costs and the more darker it gets because then we start seeing this like image of this creature, demon, whatever you want to call it, that's kind of peering behind her at times, and walking around. There's even a moment where, and I think this is one of the things that Neko and I were kind of wondering about at first, how Abel fits into this because I thought maybe Abel's the one that took the son to begin with.
Yeah, I had that feeling.
Because you saw this scene here where she's kind of like in this nightmare, and you can see the demon behind her a little bit. But she's looking at what is appearing her a van that stops in the middle of the road. Her son gets out and is trying to run to her, but then is chased by this man and picked up. So that kind of gives us a semblance that the boy was kidnapped by somebody.
Yeah.
But the guy looks almost like Abel. That's why it
Yeah.
kind of threw us for a loop there. And I'm still not even clear if it wasn't him because there's another scene where it's kind of like this, where she's back in the dream state and Abel's sitting at the bathtub, or maybe it's the guy that took the son is at the bathtub. I can't, again, it's not really
I think,
clear.
no, it was definitely the guy who kidnapped.
Yeah.
So basically, for those that are watching the review, basically, as we mentioned before, she was drunk. She had a passive addiction. She was very neglectful of her son. And her son, there's a certain flashback where she's drugged out of her mind on the couch, and her son wants her to help him get his bag packed and go to school or something, and she's like that. She can't be bothered with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just puts his bag on his shoulder and then he walks out, and he's clearly having to go to school on his own. And clearly at that moment when he left, somebody who, I think there's a scene of he's in the park and you just see in the background like a distilled image of a man watching the kids in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you know what happens. He's abducted and clearly he's been murdered.
Yeah.
I think she's guilt-ridden. That's the big point. That's one of the big vocal points of this story, is she's full of guilt.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching a couple of other reviews of this on YouTube earlier today, and like, I was kind of disappointed. Not so much that any problem with the reviewers, but like they didn't really do a lot of the homework, or they didn't remember certain things. So it's like,
Yeah,
I had to kind of stop because I'm like, well, you're missing certain points of the movie. So like, either they watched it a long time ago and were trying to review it, or just didn't remember things. But those are certain things. Like I like how you and I do this because we're kind of like explaining a bit more what's going on with the movie and who the characters are and why. And like one person even messed up the fact that the sheriff was actually her sister, not her mother. And so so it's just little details like that is important to the story of what we are watching. For anybody who's watching a review and going to watch this, you're going to want to know certain details that are accurate.
So basically, like I've said, like you've just said, there's reviewers out there that don't do the research, or they don't fully take in the film or understand the plot. But basically, she's a mother who's been addicted to drugs. She was neglectful. Her son was kidnapped, abducted, and murdered, and she's now been full of guilt, full of regrets. And meeting this Abel's give her this glimmer of hope, who's also probably been in the same situation. And she does this ritual, like we've mentioned, but then things don't always go the way to plan, and there's lots of twists and turns along the way.
Yeah, and that's the key there because Abel, even though telling the truth, he brought his daughter back, but his daughter's not with him. He knows that she's alive. He's seen pictures of her. He knows where she is, but she's not actually with him.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like a red flag there. You kind of say
Yeah.
to yourself, why is that the case? Like, you know, she's
Why
alive.
does yeah? Why does he keep talking about his daughter and how she's been brought back to life and that this ritual isn't bullshit? It's true. This is what's happened, and she sees the proof by photos or whatever that in the visions that she's been accustomed to seeing in herself. But then he keeps talking about my daughter's alive, my daughter is back. But like you said, the red flag is you never see him and the daughter together.
Right. And so then
And
we
there's a
start to
reason.
realize
Yeah.
is,
There's a reason why
yeah, and
which
that's
is
because
revealed.
he's supposed to basically he carries his demon as like a card, and so now he's got to pass it off to somebody else. Now, whether or not that means once he does, he has the freedom to go be with this kid, I don't know. That's never really clear, but it's clear that he has to try to get rid of the demon from being with him. They're like a vessel for this demon. And so now he's got to try to pass it off to her, Cora, because he knows that she's hurting, that she wants her boy back or whatever. And Cora starts to realize this, like they're doing another part of the ritual. He's coughing
This
up,
is one of my favorite scenes in the film, by the way.
yeah, he's coughing
The
up
scene where they're in the
bone.
circle.
Yeah,
And,
and he tells her, he says, "Don't leave the circle. Don't leave the circle." What does she do? She leaves the circle.
and there's a reason why, because crazy shit starts to happen.
Yeah,
He starts spitting up blood, and like all this freaky stuff starts to happen. And he's doing this ritual because, like you've mentioned, I think like you were spot on by saying yes, he got his daughter back, but he can't actually be with her because for him to be with his daughter, this demon that he's carrying within himself, or that's a shadow on his back,
yeah,
he can't be with his daughter till he expels that demon onto somebody else. And he's obviously found somebody else in a similar position. So his idea is by suckering in this Cora, I will bring your son back, which he probably will, but she'll be in the same position where the son may come back, but she wouldn't be able to be with him
yeah,
unless she did the same as what he's doing. But at the time, she does not realize this, but she knows something's not right. When all this freaky stuff starts to happen, and like you mentioned, she leaves the circle just as this crazy ass scene, which I won't spoil for the viewers if you watch this film, happens. But it's a pretty, I thought, one of the best scenes in the film.
hmm yeah. And there was another point where I really liked too. Again, it's another sort of dreamlike sequence where they're out in the cornfield or a field, and there's this table laid out, and Abel's there, and she's there, and he's telling her, "You got to complete this ritual. This is what you got to do." So he's like, kind of putting some like raw meat on a plate, telling her to eat it, and then he's got goat blood that he needs her to drink, and she ends up spitting it out, which again is sort of define the ritual the way the one thing the demon keeps saying is this is the way. So it's like the Mandalorian type thing. This is the way you got to do this.
This is the
uh,
way.
right. So she's pushing back now. She kind of understands that, oh, you just want this thing to be with me so you can get rid of it. So now she's kind of like, oh fuck, I've probably got myself in trouble here. So as you pointed out with the circle, she's already broken out of the circle. She was supposed to stay in there. So now that's kind of like fuck things for everybody. Abel's being fucked up left and right. He's probably dead by now because I think once he fails his job, he's done. Like I don't think he can
I
come
think he
back.
gets punished.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
what happens is the scene that I don't want to spoil because I love that scene when she leaves the circle, something happens to Abel's character. And that happens to him, whatever, for that. And then he's been, I think that was his punishment for not getting the job complete. And by the way, while all this is happening, you keep going back to the present because everything we're talking about, I'm assuming is flashbacks to the events that were happening at
right.
that time. at the same time as that's happening, we keep coming back to the present where she's in the jail cell or she's in the interrogation room with her sister Mabel, and she's trying to explain, this is what's happened, I need to do this, or my son is alive, or like you mentioned before, she tries to convince him about the daughter of Abel's daughter, and that's when you mentioned, they did this background check, which happens, and then they see this this girl is actually still alive, or well, she must still be alive, but obviously at the same time you see the footage or the photo of the girl that's now in Boston. I believe it was in Boston.
Yeah.
She's in school in Boston, and then at the side you see all the photos of the dead body of the same girl that was found years ago.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's funny about this demon. The first thing it kind of reminds me of is it's almost like a djinn or a genie, sort of like Wishmaster. Yeah. So you're getting, your wish, so to speak, but it's really a fucked up wish because you don't really get what you want out of it.
Actually, there's actually a quote at the beginning of the movie that I actually wrote down because I thought it was quite interesting. And the quote at the beginning of the movie was, "The dark is generous, and it's patient, and it always wins."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which I found pretty cool quote. And then as you see, as the film progresses, it makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the end of the film, I don't think anybody wins.
No, not really at all. In fact, the ending is the most interesting part of it. I don't really want to give it away.
Yeah.
But I will say this. There was a game that the mother and the son, Cora and her son, used to play where he would hide around and he would hide in his closet in the house. And at the end, Bray, the sheriff, this is while Cora's in the prison cell. Of course, she's talking to the demon there. They're kind of working out how they're going to solve their little problem. Bray's in the house just looking around, probably looking mainly for anything about Abel and what was going on with the ritual, I'm assuming, but she hears noises. And we do see her open up the closet upstairs, and I'm not going to give anything away, but this was the interesting thing about this scene for Neko and I was it kind of, for me, it's kind of open-ended. Now, it seems like it's straightforward, which it might be, but I'm sitting there going, well, what if the boy was never taken and the mother was just a bad mother who was always drugged out and hallucinating the entire thing?
Yeah, and she's just off a fucking rocker.
Right. And so, you could kind of look at it that way, even though I don't think that's the intention of the film. It's really a good ending.
You could, 100%. You could look at it that way, but then you need to look at the other side of it, which is the side of Abel and his daughter, because I found with his story as well, it talked a lot about him but it never explained what happened to his daughter, how she went missing, how she passed, what went on with his character. And the sister, you see flashbacks of her trying to, be there for Cora when she first lost her son.
Yeah.
And you see flashbacks of her standing outside of, our meetings when she was going through our meetings with her therapist or whatever. There's a lot of open story that wasn't talked about or resolved, or plot points that give much away. You basically just had to watch what you were watching, take it in, and try to, in your own mind, make your own story up for the rest like the backstory of these characters that you weren't seeing on screen, which I always found with this particular film something interesting and something quite positive about the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think even though I come away, with supposedly an open ending there, I think it is more straightforward. I think it's supposed to be the way you see it, which again, it brings a little credence to the law enforcement who have been slowly discovering that what Core is telling them is probably true. So that's the ending kind of leads more to that, which is great because I love the little boo at the end. Like I thought that was great.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Neko and I did enjoy this for what it was. Pretty good pick on your part. You've been batting 100 right now. Mine haven't been so great. But I like taking chances on stuff. I still haven't figured out what I'm gonna do next, but yeah, this was a solid pick.
Next picker,
What's that? What did you say?
Oh, sorry, you just froze there. I don't know if it froze on your end, but I'm just saying, have you picked your next pick yet?
Not yet. I've got a little short list that I work with, and so we'll see. I have something in mind. It's on Tubi, I think, still. So I might go with that just while it's there. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But what was your rating for this?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to rate this. I'm going to give this quite a high. I'm going to give it a 7. Do you give it out of numbers? I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 because the director, I thought, was good at creating atmosphere. I thought the cinematography was fantastic, especially in the beginning when you see them scenes of like the open lands and the trees and the rivers.
That was watching it again today. That was excellent. I love that shot. Like it's
beautiful... the beginning shot was just outstanding.
Yeah,
I enjoyed the music. I thought the music was eerie. It was atmospheric. I thought it did the setting of the whole movie fantastically. The acting was superb. Like I said, they're the positives. The director, I think, a good director. I think he did his job. My only negative is like you say, there were certain parts of the movie that were open-ended. And for some viewers, that might be frustrating. Or for some viewers, some of the plot points of not knowing why this happened or what, like, especially with the evil character who was there, but he didn't really have much of a background apart from seeing he had lost his daughter.
Yeah, that's kind of a key part too, I think.
Yeah. So outside of them, there's more positive to me than negative.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I also give it a 7 out of 10. I think that it's a well shot movie. It's directed pretty well. It does have that editing flaw where the story arc for Abel is kind of like the missing ingredient because you got to really have a little more of his backstory to know how he came to where he was and all that. But it doesn't hurt the movie overall. It does have a lot of good atmosphere. The shots are beautiful. And it's easy enough to follow. It's not like anything really problematic.
One other point I'll make that's a positive that I forgot to mention is the actual look of the demon.
Yeah,
I thought the practical effects look of the demon was well put together, and for me, it reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth.
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing. Yep.
Pan's Labyrinth 101. Obviously, the director, when he was creating the design of the demon within this movie, obviously, in my opinion, took
Del Toro.
Took Del Toro's influence, and it actually reminds me of the demon from Hellboy 2.
Yep.
The one when they go into the troll cave and, Hellboy ends up doing that thing. If anyone's seen that film, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I do recommend Hellboy, The Golden Army. It is a decent film.
Both those films
yes,
are amazing. I love the
yep,
Hellboy series. I wish
yep,
they would have done one more with Ron Perlman. I would have loved a trilogy.
yeah, me too. But obviously, the box office is what drove that studio. But
Yeah,
anyway, going back to this, that's probably another major positive of the movie is the design of the demon and its influences.
yeah, I agree. With everything there, so we saw a lot of the same stuff in this film. So yeah, so solid pick, man. Very good pick. Good. Kudos to you on that. So anything coming up for Kaylee Entertainment?
Well, well, a few weeks ago, I wasn't feeling too well. I was feeling up and down with the temperature. I was getting major headaches, and I discovered I had COVID.
Oh
Which,
wow.
yeah, I had COVID, but it was like I think I was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So because of that reason, I was feeling very low energy. So I've done nothing really the last 3 weeks on my page. So there was lots of things I want to review, but what I am going to do next week on the 28th of June, me, my brother, and my dad are going to Leeds, another city here in the UK, and we're going to see Iron Maiden. So I'm going to do my first blog and concert review for my page,
Nice.
which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, I've seen Maiden live. They put on a great show. You're gonna enjoy that.
It's my dad's favourite band. My dad's loved Iron Maiden since he was a kid, and he used to have a lot of friends that used to go to these concerts with. Unfortunately, some of them passed.
Pass on. Yeah.
Other friends of his have got other commitments. And me and my dad and my brother always promised ourselves that we would go to the concert together. And so we're making it happen.
Well, you definitely have to tell me he has great taste. All right. Well, I don't have much more on the play. I'm going to do a review for Diablo 4. I've been playing a lot lately. I'm not sure when I'm going to get that out. I was going to plan it this weekend, but maybe more towards middle of next week. As we discussed off air, I had some interviews planned. Maybe it comes to fruition, maybe it doesn't. But if not, maybe Nick and I will get out and see a couple of movies or just.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's something I plan on doing that I want to do because I'm a big fan of the franchise. It's one of the earliest franchises that I loved as a kid, which is the Indiana Jones franchise. I know there's been a lot of mixed reviews out there of the new movie, but I plan to see The Dial of Destiny. And if people want to know what I personally think, you'll have to wait for a review on my page.
I will be interested because right now I have no desire to see that. But I trust your judgment, so we'll see what you come up with, and I'll base my viewing on that. All right, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this edition of the Cinematic Synergy. We appreciate all the support. Please give us a like and subscribe to the channel and be on the lookout for more content. Take care of yourselves and have a great weekend.
Take care, people.
Just aiming for you.